how does lyric fit? How do lyrics fit into your songwriting process? That's probably the way to formulate that question.
Lyrics are, for me, they are the Goliath I have to slay every time. It is the hardest part to me of making records and songwriting. It's the slowest part and it's the most laborious to me. Um,
Mm.
Not in a bad way. I enjoy doing it, but it is the hardest for me to feel finished. Um, and so I found that like, do you mean like literally though, as far as like where in the process it shows up, or just what it is mentally?
Interpret it as you wish.
Okay, yeah. So for me, oftentimes lyrics are the thing that are, yeah, I'd say that I struggle with the most, just because the act of singing something is the lie detector. Like I can write something that seems good on paper and I can hear the melody in my head and then I sing it and it just doesn't connect. It doesn't
Mhm.
feel right. And that happens all the time. Like it's like, oh, that's a good idea. Sung though, I feel like an idiot, so this is not gonna fly, and I'm gonna start over. And then, uh, and because it has to be sung, that is so different from prose. Like I've written a lot of short stories, and once upon a time wanted to be a writer. Before I was going to be a musician, I wrote some
Mm.
books that I lost in a hard drive crash. So I was very into writing, and prose is something where you can, I don't know, there's a lot of freedom in it, and the constrictions that come with songwriting, it's that you have to sing it. I there's so many phrases I like the look of, but I hate the sound of, and then there are ones that sometimes sound right, but don't. I don't quite like them on paper, and usually I want to like both, and
Mm.
so it feels like a wrestling match to me to get the paper and the voice to be in sync with each other. It's difficult for sure.
Yeah, and so you said you re-record a lot. Does that mean you rewrite a lot as well?
I do. Um, I would say so for me, like the idea of a song, oftentimes I know thematically what I'm working on. I know what I'm trying to get across or what the idea of the song is. Um, until I have that idea, I have no filter, and I usually get nowhere. Like I use themes to constrain my mind. I need something to push against,
Mhm.
and uh, I've writing about myself is not super interesting. I've been trying it more. It's still my least favorite. So I don't look often totally inwards for topics. So usually I need a theme of some kind, something I'm trying to capture or get across. But then when you go to write the lyrics, yeah, I end up rewriting them all the time because of just, I know I want a long vowel at exactly this point, but the only vowel that sounds good in this range for me is a long A. So I have to find on the second syllable a long A and a word that means this. It's like so many rules to get it to fit that I can sometimes miss that word for weeks. I just can't think of the word.
How do you find the word?
Oftentimes, I've found this is not a very reliable technique, but for some reason it works more than it doesn't. I put the melody in my head, like I decide to like I know this melody and I'm just gonna hum it a lot. And
Mm.
half the time I come up with the word just like in the shower or cooking or doing something else. I'll just go, I know what to say. And then I'll stop what I'm doing and go record like a demo of it. And I go, okay, I found it. That verse is finished. So a lot of times I think it's like a marinating process and subconsciously it'll work itself out. Because if I sit there and just try over and over, it usually feels as forced as I'm forcing it. So yeah, if I'm stuck, I tend to just go, I'll just put it in the head and see what it'll come out eventually. Um, so yeah.
And let's take the more literal interpretation of that question. Then, when in the songwriting process do the lyrics come?
So I very rarely, but sometimes start with words. That's my least common technique. I usually start, I've learned not to write whole sections because it's really hard to know how all these pieces are going to fit together and feel finished. So a lot of times my initial lyrics are probably, I'd say, 3 to 5 lines that I've written that I feel encapsulate the idea of the song. And
Mhm.
I use the lines as my guide when I'm making music. And then I scrap them once I know my vocal melody. And I try to take that content and put it into that shape. So for me, lyrics are it's pretty rare that I start with the lyrics, and the only time I've ever been successful is when I'm also starting with a decided form. I know I'm going to do verse, chorus, or something. It's a little easier to write the words if I have a form to rely
Mhm.
on, but I don't really like verse, chorus writing. I tend to like a lot of like movements or shapes because I like to use music to accent what the words are going to say, or even use music to substitute what the words are going to say. I'll put the real content in the music and I'll put the words as almost like what I would tell you as a person, like lying to myself, but the music tells the truth. I
Mhm.
like things like that, like juxtapositions. And so, because of this, it's rare that the words are first. Usually, I'd say somewhere between the middle and towards the end. They're never the last thing, though. Once the words are in, that's when I can finish arrangements.
So it's a symbiotic process in a sense then, because it kind of starts with the lyrics, but it also doesn't. And then,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's been something that's been interesting for me. I think about largely working alone is um, I don't have to explain any of it to anyone else, so it can always be symbiotic. And I think that's what I really enjoy. It's why I started the Radical Face project in the first place. It's become my most popular, but I was very surprised by this at first, like because I was in bands that I thought would be a lot easier to listen to, and I thought this music would be too personal and uncomfortable. And sometimes I think it still is, but that's okay. It works well enough. But yeah, that symbiotic idea to me is that I can kind of carry the concept or aspects of the words with me until they feel ready to become the focus. And it
Mhm.
happens at different stages on different songs. But um, I think writing music with no lyrics in mind is interesting, but for me, not usually very fruitful for a record. I end up with songs, but they never have any glue between them, and it just feels kind of like a song. It feels like a moment or a whim. And when I have an idea for words in my mind while I'm at a piano or something, I'm searching for something to go with the words, and it helps guide me. It helps me go like that. I'm looking for a somber kind of feeling, and I find some chords and I go, that goes with those words, and I've paired them now. That's usually how I
Mm.
know I have something to demo and start putting into an album. So yeah, it's non-linear for sure.
I guess it rarely